The biggest reason people never reach the life they dream about is not because they lack opportunity, intelligence, or potential. It's because they have trained their minds to produce excuses faster than they produce effort. Excuses are like a silent disease, a virus that spreads through your thoughts until it becomes your entire identity. And the most dangerous part is that excuses feel comfortable. They feel safe. They sound reasonable. They sound like protection when in reality they are the chains keeping you exactly where you are. When a man repeats excuses long enough, he doesn't just believe them, he becomes them. And the moment you become your excuses, your life is no longer controlled by your ambition. It's controlled by your limitations. People don't wake up one morning and decide to fail. Failure happens slowly through tiny excuses repeated day after day. You tell yourself you're tired, so you skip the gym. You tell yourself you're stressed, so you avoid the hard work. You tell yourself you'll start tomorrow, knowing that tomorrow will bring another excuse and another delay. What you don't realize is that every excuse you allow becomes a vote for the weaker version of yourself. And every time you choose that version, you move further away from the man you were meant to be. You aren't losing to life. You're losing to your own story. Excuses are seductive because they remove responsibility. They give you permission to stay soft. They give you permission to blame something else. Your past, your environment, your parents, your job, your mood, your situation. Excuses make you feel like you're not the problem. But here's the truth you don't want to admit. The moment you blame something else, you surrender your power. Once you believe an excuse, you stop fighting, you stop pushing, you stop growing, and you hand your entire future to circumstance instead of taking control of it. If you want to rise in life, you must learn to identify the voice inside your head that tries to justify weakness. That voice that whispers, it's okay to rest when you haven't earned rest. That voice that says, you're doing enough, when deep down you know you're doing the bare minimum. That voice that tells you you can't help it, when in reality you simply don't want to face difficulty. That voice is not your friend. That voice is not trying to protect you. That voice is your enemy, disguised as comfort. And until you learn to silence it, you will always remain stuck in the same cycle of almost starting, almost improving, almost succeeding. You need to understand that every man who has achieved something great has had every reason to make excuses. Every successful man has had moments of pain, exhaustion, discouragement, setbacks, and fear. But the difference between winners and losers is simple. Winners do not negotiate with excuses. They act in spite of them. They move forward even when they don't feel ready. They refuse to let their mind talk them out of the work that must be done, because they understand that excuses are emotional, but results are factual. Your excuse may sound good to you, but life does not care. The world only respects outcomes, and that is exactly why you must start treating excuses like poison. The moment an excuse appears in your mind, attack it. Replace it with action. Replace it with responsibility. Replace it with the truth that your life is shaped entirely by what you decide to do, not what you tell yourself to feel better. You are not trapped by your circumstances. You are trapped by the excuses you have built around them. Break those excuses, and suddenly you will find paths where before you saw walls. Break those excuses, and you will discover how much power you actually have when you stop lying to yourself. The man you want to become is not hidden behind motivation, talent, or luck. He is hidden behind the excuses you refuse to kill. Every man wants a better life, but very few are willing to do the uncomfortable, disciplined work required to create it. And the reason is simple. People are controlled by their feelings. They move when they feel motivated. They quit when they feel tired. They chase goals only when it feels exciting. They wait for inspiration, then complain when nothing changes. They live their lives like passengers instead of drivers, reacting to emotion instead of commanding action. And until you break that pattern, you will never rise above the level you're currently stuck in. Feelings are inconsistent. Feelings are unreliable. Feelings change with the weather, with your mood, with what someone said to you, with how much you slept, with how stressful your day was. If your life is being guided by something that's unstable, how can you expect your results to be stable? How can you expect success to show up consistently when your effort depends on how you feel that morning? This is why so many people start strong and disappear. This is why they talk big but execute small. Their feelings dictate their performance, and weak feelings produce weak lives. Discipline is the opposite. Discipline is not emotional, it's not negotiable, and it's not dependent on comfort. Discipline is a code, something you follow whether you feel like it or not. Discipline is the decision to act based on principles, not moods. Discipline is the understanding that effort comes first and feelings come later. Because once you act, once you push, once you move, motivation appears. But most people wait to feel good before they do good. And that's exactly why they stay behind. Life will always test you at the moment you least want to be tested. You'll be tired, stressed, annoyed, overwhelmed, or discouraged. Those moments are not accidents, they are checkpoints. And each checkpoint asks the same question: will you follow your feelings or will you follow your discipline? If you choose feelings, you stay exactly where you are. If you choose discipline, you move to a new level of strength. Discipline is built in discomfort, not convenience. It is built in repetition, not excitement. It is built in the silent, lonely moments where nobody is applauding and nobody is watching except the future version of you who is depending on the choices you make right now. The truth is, discipline creates freedom. When you are disciplined, you don't waste time overthinking. You don't sit around negotiating with yourself. You don't get trapped in emotional cycles. You wake up and act. You do the work. You follow your plan. You build momentum. And each day you do it, you become a man who trusts himself, a man who respects himself, a man who knows that no matter how he feels, he will complete what must be completed. That level of self-trust is rare. That level of self-control is powerful. That level of consistency is what separates leaders from followers. You need to stop expecting your feelings to align with your goals. They won't. Your feelings are designed to protect you from discomfort, not push you toward greatness. Your feelings will always choose the easy road. Sleep more, relax more, avoid stress, avoid pain, avoid effort. But nothing worth having is found on the easy road. Every achievement you admire, every success story you wish was yours, every life you envy was built through discipline, sacrifice, and relentless consistency. Those people didn't wait for the perfect mood. They created results because they stopped listening to their excuses and started respecting their commitments. You must become a man who acts even when it's inconvenient. A man who executes even when nobody is clapping. A man who shows up even when the world gives him 100 reasons not to. That is how you break the cycle of stopping and starting. That is how you build a version of yourself you can rely on. Discipline is not a punishment. It is the doorway to the life you want. And the moment you choose it over your feelings, everything in your life begins to shift in your favor. When you look at the world around you, you'll notice something very clear. The people who win, the people who rise, the people who dominate their goals are never the ones who wait for someone to save them. They are the men who take full responsibility for their lives. And responsibility isn't glamorous. It isn't easy. It isn't the part of success that people like to talk about. But it is the part that transforms you from someone who wishes into someone who executes. You become powerful the moment you stop blaming circumstances and start owning your outcomes. Most people live their entire lives pointing fingers. They blame their parents for not giving them enough. They blame the economy for being slow. They blame society for being unfair. They blame their past for shaping them. They blame their environment, their job, their city, their friends. And because they're always blaming, they never build. They think responsibility is a burden when in reality, responsibility is freedom. The moment you take responsibility, you regain control. You take the steering wheel out of the hands of excuses and put it back into your own. When you understand that every choice you make is shaping you, you stop treating your days casually. You stop wasting hours on meaningless distractions. You stop allowing laziness to slip into your routines. Responsibility creates awareness, and awareness forces you to see the truth about your habits, your patterns, and your results. The reason most people avoid responsibility is because responsibility exposes their weaknesses. It forces them to confront the hard truth that they are not doing enough. But that confrontation is exactly what you need if you want to evolve. Nothing in your life gets better until you get better. Nothing changes until you change. And change only happens when you acknowledge the role you play in your own suffering. The world isn't coming to save you. Nobody is going to knock on your door and hand you the discipline you're lacking, the success you want, or the life you dream about. Every man who has built something worth respecting has done it by accepting that his life is his fault. That mindset is not depressing. It is empowering. When you take full ownership of your life, you become unstoppable. You stop waiting for motivation because you know action is your responsibility. You stop complaining because complaining doesn't move you anywhere. You stop expecting fairness because you realize life rewards effort, not emotion. Responsibility sharpens your character. It transforms how you walk, how you speak, how you think, and how you show up. You begin carrying yourself like a man who knows that everything he does has consequences. And when you live with that awareness, you stop acting like a victim and start acting like a creator. Responsibility also brings clarity. When you know everything rests on your decisions, you stop guessing and start strategizing. You stop drifting and start directing. You stop seeking validation and start seeking progress. And as you take responsibility day after day, your confidence grows. Not fake confidence, not ego-based confidence, but real confidence built through competence and consistency. You trust yourself because you see yourself doing the work. You become a man whose actions align with his words. Most importantly, responsibility forces you to raise your standards. You can't claim responsibility and still live like everyone else. You can't blame no one and yet behave like you have no control. Responsibility makes you demand more from yourself. It creates pressure, but the good kind of pressure, the kind that builds strength instead of breaking you. Pressure becomes the tool that molds you into the man you're capable of being, not the man your excuses are trying to keep you. As taking responsibility isn't about being perfect. It's about refusing to run from the truth. It's about looking at your life with honesty and saying, if I want this to change, I must change. And once you truly adopt that mindset, your entire direction shifts. You stop being influenced by every emotion and start being guided by purpose, discipline, and intention. You start moving with direction, not drift. And that is the beginning of becoming a man who doesn't rely on luck or circumstance, but on the power of his own decisions. There comes a moment when you realize that your feelings have been controlling far too much of your life. They dictate when you start, when you stop, when you rest, when you quit, and when you convince yourself that maybe tomorrow will be better. But tomorrow doesn't change until you do, and nothing changes as long as your emotions are in charge. The truth is simple. Winners act regardless of how they feel, and losers let feelings justify their inaction. That's the divide, that's the difference, and that's the reason some people create extraordinary lives while others stay stuck in cycles of excuses. Your feelings are not a compass, they are a distraction. They pull you toward comfort, toward ease, toward the path of least resistance. They want you to avoid discomfort at all costs because discomfort forces growth, and growth requires effort. The man who relies on his emotions to guide his actions never gets far because emotions fluctuate constantly. One day you feel motivated, the next day you feel drained. One moment you feel unstoppable, the next moment you feel lost. If you build your life on something that's unstable, your life becomes unstable too. But when you understand that discipline is the anchor, everything shifts. Discipline is the force that keeps you on track when feelings try to derail you. Discipline is the voice inside you that says, do it anyway, even when your mind is trying to negotiate a shortcut. Discipline is the reminder that long-term success matters more than short-term comfort. And once you begin to lead with discipline instead of emotion, you start to access a power most people never experience. Acting without emotion doesn't mean you become cold or robotic. It means you become in control. It means you stop being manipulated by laziness, fear, fatigue, doubt, and hesitation. Those emotions will always exist, but discipline builds a filter that allows you to move forward anyway. You learn to acknowledge your feelings without surrendering to them. And in that state, you become dangerous, not to others, but to your excuses, your old habits, and the weaker version of yourself that constantly tried to hold you back. Every successful person you admire has mastered this. They didn't succeed because they felt like it every day. They succeeded because they built systems, habits, and mental structures that carried them through days when motivation was nowhere to be found. Motivation is great, but it's temporary. Discipline is permanent. Motivation is a spark, but discipline is the fuel. And when you run your life on discipline, you stay in motion even when the spark goes out. Feelings tell you to stay comfortable, but comfort is a trap. It looks safe, it feels warm, but it quietly kills your potential. Comfort convinces you that progress can wait, that goals can be delayed, that your dreams don't require urgency. It blinds you to the reality that time doesn't slow down for anyone. Every minute you spend giving in to feelings is a minute taken from your future self, the version of you that could be stronger, smarter, wealthier, and more capable. When you begin choosing discipline over feelings, you build momentum. That momentum becomes confidence. That confidence becomes identity. You start to see yourself as someone who does what needs to be done, no matter the circumstances. And once that becomes your identity, the world can't stop you. You wake up earlier, you work harder, you push past limits, and you stop negotiating with yourself. You stop asking, "Do I feel like it?" and start saying, "It must be done." That single shift elevates you above 99% of people, because most people live their entire lives following their feelings instead of their purpose. Discipline creates results, and results create belief. And once you believe deeply and undeniably that you are capable of more, you start expecting more from yourself. You start treating every task as an opportunity to sharpen your character. You start moving with precision, intention, and control. You become the type of man who doesn't wait for perfect conditions, who doesn't require emotional permission, and who doesn't crack when life becomes difficult. You become the type of man who acts, executes, and delivers even when every feeling inside you is begging for the easy way out. There is a point every man reaches when he finally realizes that the world does not reward intention. It rewards execution. It rewards the man who shows up, the man who puts in the hours, the man who pushes through resistance, and the man who delivers results even when everything around him is pushing him to stop. Hard work isn't optional. It isn't something you do only when you feel inspired. Hard work is the foundation of everything you want. And without it, all you have left are dreams that will never materialize. You can talk about your potential, your plans, your vision, but until your effort supports your words, nothing changes. People love to glamorize success. They love stories about breakthroughs, achievements, and victories, but they rarely highlight the grind that leads to those moments. They don't show the late nights, the early mornings, the constant discipline, the sacrifices, or the emotional battles you must fight day after day. The truth is that the world only sees the final product, never the process. And that's why so many people underestimate what it actually takes to win. They see a champion and assume talent. They see wealth and assume luck. They see confidence and assume it came naturally. But behind every win is a mountain of work. Most people would never endure. Hard work matters because it changes you. Not just your circumstances, but your character. It forces you to confront your limits. It forces you to push beyond them. Every hour you dedicate to your craft is shaping you into someone more capable, more resilient, and more dangerous. Hard work trains your mind to endure discomfort, and that's where true strength is built. It's easy to work hard when it's convenient. It's easy to stay disciplined when everything is going right. But the real test of a man is whether he can remain committed when the effort feels heavy, when progress feels slow, and when results are nowhere in sight. When you commit to hard work, you develop something that cannot be bought, copied, or fake self-respect. Because you know you're doing what most people refuse to do. You know you're not living on excuses. You know you're not hiding behind fear or laziness. And that awareness gives you power. It gives you an edge. The man who respects himself is the man who can't be broken easily because he knows what he's capable of. He's seen himself endure hardship, and he knows he can endure more. Hard work also creates opportunity. People always wonder why certain individuals seem to get lucky, why doors open for them, why success gravitates toward them. But what they fail to see is that those individuals prepared for those opportunities long before they appeared. They were grinding in silence, putting in the reps, building the skill, and shaping the mindset needed to capitalize on the moment when it finally arrived. Hard work makes you ready for the opportunities that others miss because they simply weren't prepared. And the beauty of hard work is that it compounds. Every day you show up adds another layer to your foundation. Every task you complete strengthens your discipline. Every challenge you overcome sharpens your resilience. Over time, you build momentum that separates you from everyone else. That momentum becomes your advantage. People may start ahead of you, but if they lack consistency, you will eventually surpass them. Because hard work executed daily beats talent executed occasionally. Most people underestimate how much they can accomplish in a year of relentless focus. They let distractions fragment their attention. They let emotions dictate their schedule. They let convenience decide their future. But the man who commits to hard work, who ignores excuses and follows through regardless of circumstances, becomes unstoppable. He becomes a force that intimidates problems rather than being intimidated by them. He becomes a man whose work ethic is so powerful that the world has no choice but to take notice. You need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. You need to understand that fatigue is not a signal to stop. It's a signal that you're moving closer to your goals. You need to embrace the grind not as a punishment, but as a privilege. Because every drop of effort you invest today shapes the strength you carry tomorrow. Hard work is not something you do once. It's something you become. It's an identity, a lifestyle, a commitment to outworking every version of yourself that existed before this moment. Look, there's something people never understand until they finally transform. They think success is an event, a moment, a trophy, a check, a result they can point at and say, yeah, that's when I made it. But that's not how it works. Success is an identity long before it becomes a reality. It's something you become inside yourself first. And that identity is built through relentless action, through a level of disciplines so consistent and so unbreakable that even you start to question whether you're human or machine. That's where real results come from. That's where the no excuse mindset becomes a lifestyle. Most people try to act successful for a day. They grind for a week. They push hard until it gets uncomfortable. Then they quit because their mind still isn't trained to be the kind of person who keeps going after the comfort dies. But you, if you're listening right now, if you've made it all the way into this keynote, you're not here to be average. You're here because you want the part of yourself that you've been ignoring. You want the part of yourself that doesn't fold, doesn't slow down, doesn't negotiate with laziness. You want to build the identity that produces results automatically, the identity where excuses don't even enter the conversation, and the truth is, identity is built every single day in silence. It's built in the moment you wake up and refuse to hit snooze. It's built when you choose to push through discomfort instead of backing down. It's built in the repetitions nobody sees, in the sacrifices nobody praises, in the discipline nobody claps for. Every time you choose action over excuses, you cast a vote for the person you want to become. And those votes accumulate. Those actions compound. Eventually, you stop acting disciplined and you start being disciplined. You stop acting powerful and you start being powerful. People will always ask, how do I stay motivated? But the ones who win never ask that. They don't chase motivation. They create momentum. They don't wait to feel like doing the work. They do the work until the work feels like them. And that's the key. The goal is not to force yourself every day. The goal is to transform into the type of person who doesn't even consider skipping the work. When the identity is set, the actions become natural. You don't struggle anymore. You don't bargain with yourself. You don't need hype. You don't need inspiration. The result becomes a byproduct of who you are, but to reach that identity, you have to adopt a philosophy that most people reject because it's too hard, too demanding, too unforgiving. It's the belief that you will do what needs to be done, even when nobody is watching, especially when nobody is watching. That's where champions are made. That's where leaders are formed. That's where people separate themselves from the world's excuses and build a life defined purely by their actions. It's never about showing others what you can do. It's always about proving to yourself that you are capable of more than you thought. And the crazy thing is, once that identity locks in, once you finally cross that invisible line between who you were and who you decide to be, life changes quietly but dramatically. You start respecting yourself more. You stop caring about opinions. You start attracting opportunities because your work ethic becomes impossible to ignore. Your standards rise, your pace rises, your inner voice sharpens. You start walking differently, talking differently, thinking differently. You become someone who earns results naturally because your identity doesn't allow anything less. At the end of everything we've talked about, the message becomes painfully clear: your life will never change until you take complete ownership of it. Not partial ownership, not selective ownership, not the kind that works when life is easy. I'm talking about the kind of ownership that refuses to make excuses no matter what challenges show up. The kind of ownership that forces you to look in the mirror and admit that every result you have, good or bad, came from you. That's the moment everything begins to shift. That's the moment weakness dies and power starts to grow. When you stop letting excuses breathe, you start letting discipline live. When you stop looking for the perfect moment, you start creating progress in imperfect moments. When you stop waiting for motivation, you start building momentum. And momentum is the force that transforms average people into unstoppable individuals. Once you break the cycle of hesitation and step into the cycle of relentless action, life responds in ways you never imagined. Opportunities appear, confidence grows, direction becomes clearer. Not because the world suddenly changed, but because you finally became the person capable of shaping it. This entire speech has been a reminder that results belong to those who move, who push, who persist, who refuse to slow down when others quit. The world respects results. It listens to results. It rewards results. And those results come from a mind that is stronger than excuses, from a heart that is committed longer than the struggle, and from a spirit that keeps going even when the body wants to stop. You don't need to be the smartest. You don't need to be the strongest. You don't need to be the most talented. You just need to be the one who refuses to quit when it gets hard, because once you reach that point, once you decide that you will do whatever it takes, no matter how you feel, no matter how tired you are, no matter what obstacles stand in front of you, you unlock a version of yourself that most people will never meet. A version of yourself that is disciplined, focused, unshakable, unstoppable. A version of yourself that does not break, does not complain, does not negotiate with weakness. A version of yourself that lives by one rule: no excuses, just results.